Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the English with Gemma podcast, where we turn English practice into progress. Yes, I have purple hair today. Um, in case my grandma is watching, I just want to reassure her that this is temporary hair dye. It's wash out, so it will fade after a couple of washes. I just wanted to try something new. So nobody panic, it's not permanent. Today we have a quick and I think very useful episode. It's all about 5 grammar myths that your teacher never told you. So maybe when you were learning grammar in school and you were learning English as a second language, you were taught some specific rules that actually aren't true. And a lot of it is true for me as well. Like in school, I was taught a lot of these rules, and I grew up thinking that that was just like the truth. But actually, these are myths. They are things or rules that we've been taught that actually aren't true. So the first one is that you can never end a sentence with a preposition. You may have heard this rule and it's been maybe driven into your brain. Don't end a sentence with a preposition. For example, where are you going to? So you end the sentence with to or in or at or some type of preposition. But let's be real. Like, how often do native speakers actually follow this? The truth is, this rule is outdated and it doesn't always apply anymore. In fact, avoiding a preposition at the end of a sentence can make your speech sound unnatural or overly formal. So, for example, instead of saying, who are you talking to, which is a totally natural and normal and fine sentence, who are you talking to? And you have that preposition at the end, to, you might hear something really formal and clunky like, to whom are you talking? Which sounds super formal and honestly a bit robotic. Nobody sounds like that. While to whom is technically correct, most people would never actually say that in casual conversation. So go ahead and end your sentence, excuse me, with a preposition if it feels if it feels natural. Why does this literally, I swear, I have the worst luck. Every time I try to record, I have a coughing fit or something like that. And I don't want to be drinking water all the time in these episodes, so I just kind of struggle through it. Okay. Sorry for coughing into your face. Let's move on to our next myth. This one is that ain't isn't a real word. So if you were told that ain't is not a real word, I hate to break it to you, it actually is. Ain't has been around for centuries, and it was originally used in literature and even formal speech. And it's a contraction between am not, is not, or are not, and even have not and has not in some dialects. Over time, it became associated with informal speech and it got a bad reputation in schools. But in certain dialects, especially in the southern United States and in British English, it is still widely used. So while it might not be standard English, it's definitely a real word. So you might hear, especially in rap music, like, I ain't gonna do that. It means I am not going to do that. Or she ain't your friend. She isn't your friend. So this is really widely used in a lot of different types of speech. And it is, it's not technically correct English, but it is used. So you will see this all the time in TV programs and in music a lot as well. So, myth number 3 is that this is one that I believed up until very recently, that you cannot start a sentence with and or but. So, this is really not true. You totally can. Many professional writers and even great literary works start with and or but to make writing sound more natural and conversational. If we avoided this all the time, writing would just sound stiff and really unnatural. So you definitely can start a sentence with and or but. For example, I was really hungry, full stop. but I didn't have any food in the house. It sounds fine, right? So feel free to break this so-called rule. Myth number 4 is about double negatives, and it's that double negatives are always wrong. So in standard English, you'll often hear that two negatives make a positive, meaning sentences like, I don't know nothing, are incorrect because they actually mean, I know something. But hold on, because in many dialects, including Afrin African American Vernacular English, AAVE, Cockney English, and some Southern US accents, double negatives are a completely natural and valid way of speaking. This isn't wrong, it's just a different way of using English. And even in older forms of English, double negatives were commonly used, and we still see them in literature. So while you might want to avoid them in formal writing, they're not wrong in every context. Our last myth is that you must never split an infinitive. So here, this is a grammar rule that confuses a lot of learners. The idea that you should never split an infinitive, and that means a word between two, putting a word between two and the verb. So like to eat, and then you insert a word in the middle of to and eat. So this is fine, actually. This rule comes from the idea that English should follow Latin grammar rules, where infinitives are like one single word and cannot be split in half, but English is not Latin, so it's totally fine. One of the most famous examples of a split infinitive is actually from the movie Star Trek. There's a sentence that says, to boldly go where no one has gone before. So as you can see, to go is our infinitive, and we have the adverb boldly, which means bravely, to boldly go. So if we strictly followed this so-called rule about not splitting infinitives, we would have to say to go boldly where no one has gone before, which is correct, but it doesn't have the same impact because the to go is coming before the adverb boldly, and you're not getting as much emphasis on the word boldly. So feel free to split infinitives if it would sound better and clearer. So, what's the takeaway from today's episode? I would say it's that English is a living language, as are all languages. And even though we were taught some rules in school, they're not as strict as they seem. And you will realize there's a big difference between textbook English and what is grammatically correct, and then real life native speakers using the language. And this often confuses learners because they think, well, why does English not sound like it does in the way that I learned it in my textbooks? And that's because, the language evolves, people use it differently. And I'm sure in your own native language, it's the same. Like people probably say things that are technically incorrect, but it's widely accepted. So don't stress too much about following these so-called rules. Just focus on communicating naturally and clearly instead. And, unless you're like in a very formal business context or something like that, it is okay to speak casually and naturally and normally like native speakers do all the time. So that's it for today, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on Instagram at English with Gemma. I'm on TikTok. I'm also on Spotify and YouTube. So feel free to check me out. And as always, if you have any suggestions for what you would like to see in the next episodes, feel free to put a comment down below and suggest something. I would love to hear from you guys. So thank you so much for watching. Keep practicing your grammar, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.